Thanks for testing if the mic works, Minister. Good afternoon, colleagues. Welcome to the G20. I see there's a high level of attendance. We really appreciate that. It also indicates that the accreditation process has been proceeding quite well. I'm sure we can confirm. Having said that, thank you very much. This press briefing convened by Minister Lamola, and he is joined by the host for the province, Premier Lesufi. We all know him. And on the right is the Minister for Finance, Minister Godongwana. Minister, I would now like to hand over to you to then read out our press statement, which we'll share immediately after the Minister is done. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Crispin, and colleagues, Minister Godongwana, and also the Premier of Gauteng. I have requested them to join me so that they can answer some of the questions. Minister Godongwana, we have been working together for the whole year. He is running the finance track of the G20. The Premier of Gauteng, you know him. He has been fixing potholes and roads and everything, together with the Mayor of Gauteng, of Johannesburg, of Tshwane and of Ekurhuleni. So he must answer for his sins. Thank you very much. I will now proceed to read the statement. It is my distinct honor to welcome you to Nasrec Precinct, the National Arts, Sports, Recreation Event Center, a place that stands as a living testament to South Africa's journey of transformation and resilience. Nasrec, also known as the Johannesburg Expo Center, is more than just a venue. It is a space steeped in history, culture, and progress. Since its establishment in September 1984, it has grown to become the largest purpose-built exhibition and conference venue on the African continent, spanning over 50 hectares. It has hosted countless events that have shaped our national narrative. During the dark days of apartheid, Nasrec was a rare bridge connecting Johannesburg South, home to Soweto, with Johannesburg North, then reserved for the white citizens under the Group Areas Act. Even in those times, Nasrec offered glimpses of unity, where people of all races will gather for events like the Rand Easter Show, defying the barriers of segregation. This facility remains a symbol of our commitment to bridge the spatial and economic divides of our past. It is surrounded by landmarks that echo our story: Gold Reef City, the Apartheid Museum, and Vilakazi Street, the only street in the world to have housed two Nobel Peace Laureates, President Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Just a stone's throw away is Soccer City, where the world witnessed the opening of the first FIFA World Cup on the African soil, a moment that united not only South Africa, but the entire continent in pride and celebration. It is against this powerful backdrop that we gather today as South Africa proudly leads the G20 presidency, a historic milestone that places our nation at the center of global dialogue and cooperation. Our presidency is a call to action as the last nation of the Global South to hold the presidency in this cycle, a call to bridge the developmental divide between the Global North and the Global South, to champion equity, sustainability, and shared prosperity. We have invited you here today to brief the people of South Africa and the world through you in the progress we have made during this year's long journey of leadership, diplomacy, and transformation. Let Nasrec remind us that where divisions once stood, unity can rise, that where exclusion once ruled, inclusion can flourish, and that South Africa, with its rich history and unwavering spirit, is ready to lead the world towards a more just and connected future. This major gathering takes place where South Africa's economy is beginning to turn the corner. The winds of change are no longer on the horizon, they are here. Our network industries, once strained, are now stabilizing. Energy and logistics, the lifeblood of any thriving economy, are being revitalized through decisive leadership and bold reforms through Operation Vulindlela. Today, load shedding is behind us. This remarkable turnaround is thanks to the capable and visionary leadership of Minister of Electricity, Khosi Enzo Ramokgopa, Mr. Mteto Nyati, the chairperson of the board, and the operational excellency of the EXCOM CEO, Mr. Dan Marukana. Together, they have steered the nation into a new era of energy security. This progress is not isolated. It is part of a broader wave of reform driven by Operation Vulindlela under Minister Godongwana, which continues to unlock South Africa's economic potential one sector at a time. The official unemployment rate fell to 31.9% in the third quarter of 2025, from 32.9% in the second quarter. South Africa is out from the grey FATF list. This wave of positive sentiments was amplified last week, November the 14th, when S&P Global Ratings delivered South Africa's first sovereign credit rating upgrade in nearly 2 decades, raising the long-term foreign currency rating from BB to BB with a positive outlook. The upgrade cited stronger growth prospects, improved fiscal consolidation, and reduced contingent liabilities, particularly reflecting improvement in the energy sector. While South Africa remains below investment grade, the upgrade is significant. It lowers borrowing costs, broadens the investor base, and signals renewed confidence into the country's reform trajectory. Our sports teams are also flying our flag very high. The Springboks are in imposing form. Our cricket team defied all odds this week, clutching victory when it seemed impossible, the ladies' cricket team. Bafana Bafana are back with a bang. They have qualified for the World Cup for the first time since 2002. The list of positives is endless. The sky is the limit. It is in this context that the G20 is taking place on the South African soil. There is no doubt that we still have challenges to contend with: the crime, corruption, achieving higher level of sustained economic growth, and more jobs. But all these challenges are not insurmountable. We have proven that we are a resilient nation. As we stand at the final stages of our historic G20 presidency, the first ever on the African soil, we do so with pride and purpose. Of the 133 official G20 meetings, 130 have already taken place, with the fourth Sherpa meeting, social summit, and the Leaders Summit set to conclude this transformative journey right here in Johannesburg this week. When South Africa assumed the G20 chairship last year, the world was navigating a precarious geopolitical climate. Our response was clear and courageous. The world needs more solidarity, equality, and sustainability. These are not just words, they are the pillars of our presidency, rooted deeply in the African philosophy of Ubuntu. Ubuntu reminds us that I am because we are, a timeless truth that resonates with the global commitment to Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals, especially the call to leave no one behind. South Africa's G20 presidency has not only elevated African voices, it has galvanized global momentum towards a more inclusive, equitable, and a sustainable future. We are not just participating in global affairs, we are determining to shape them with all our partners in these global platforms. Our presidency builds for the future, it does not preserve the ways of the past. Our presidency has been anchored on the 4 overarching priorities that President Cyril Ramaphosa declared or mentioned when he launched the G20 themes and presidency earlier this year. Strengthening disaster resilience and response, ensuring debt sustainability for low-income countries, mobilizing finance for a just energy transition, and harnessing critical minerals for inclusive growth and sustainable development. In addition to our overarching priorities, we also established 3 task forces which focus on inclusive economic growth, industrialization, employment, and reduced inequality, food security, artificial intelligence, data governance, innovation for sustainable development. At the 2024 Rio de Janeiro Summit, G20 leaders made a commitment to evaluate the G20's first full cycle of presidencies under South Africa's presidency, and with the full respect to the principles agreed at the Cairns Summit in 2011, provide recommendations to the second cycle, including a roadmap for future presidencies. The G20 review will reflect the diverse national views of G20 members and permanent guest countries, including through a survey, a dedicated discussion at the third G20 Sherpa meeting in July, and inputs from G20 review advisory panel comprised of former G20 Sherpas and experts. The findings of this process has been synthesized into a high-level report for presentation and proposed endorsement by G20 leaders at the 2025 Johannesburg Summit in South Africa. Following the African Union's inclusion in the G20 in 2023, at the New Delhi Summit, we have worked hand in hand with African Union to amplify Africa's voice in global economic governance, while ensuring that the development priorities of the African continent and the Global South find expression firmly onto the agenda of the G20. As a continent, we are still reeling from a world order that prized division over unity, inequality over haircuts, and plunder over preservation. Our G20 presidency recently held a highly successful and well-attended G20 high-level dialogue on debt sustainability, the cost of capital, and the reform of the international financial architecture in Addis Ababa, which was held at the African Union headquarters on the 10th of November 2025. At this meeting, we heard from experts and participants on what needs to be done to ensure Africa's developmental shift from aid to investment-driven growth, pushing for reforms that, amongst others, lower capital costs, expand financing for development, drive innovation solutions, reinforce the role to be played by African institutions, the importance of domestic resource mobilization, as well as the significant need to shift the conversation from short-term fixes to long-term transformation. Again, its reports will come out during the week of the G20. Our G20 presidents also convene a G20 Africa expert panel that is chaired by the former South African Minister of Finance, Mr. Trevor Manuel. The overall objective of the Africa Expert Panel is to offer strategic advice by exploring and defining strategies that advance Africa's collective development interest, focusing on issues like the cost of capital through increased voice, effective representation, and the achievement of reformed and all-inclusive global economic policy through the G20. Having presented its finding to President Ramaphosa 2 days ago, the Africa Expert Panel will in the coming days release a high-level report with its key recommendations. To translate policy frameworks into scaled-up inclusive growth, industrialization, employment, and reduce inequality impacts in Africa, South Africa's G20 presidency is championing an elevated, broadened Compact with Africa initiative which will be driven by Agenda 2063, and particularly the second 10-year implementation plan. The Compact with Africa, co-chaired by South Africa and Germany, is designed to facilitate economic reforms across the continent and to attract investment from pools of private sector funds in the global north. We further convened outreach meetings on food security in Cairo and on industrialization in Abuja in Nigeria, respectively. Since South Africa took over the G20 presidency, President Ramaphosa committed to building a better Africa and ensuring inclusivity. The presidency has focused on advancing the Global South and Africa's economic financial interests. We have also advocated for a significant reform of the international financial architecture to make it more equitable, inclusive, responsive to the development and climate financing needs of developing countries, particularly Africa. In our efforts to contribute to strengthening our multilateralism and its reforms to make it fit for purpose, we convened the second G20 Foreign Ministers meeting on the margins of the United Nations General Assembly, high-level week in New York on the 25th of September 2025, under the theme, The United Nations at 80, reaffirming peace as a path to sustainable economic development. The report of the G20 Extraordinary Committee on Global Inequality was also launched and presented to President Ramaphosa on the 4th of November 2025 in Cape Town. One of the key recommendations of the report is the creation of a permanent international panel on inequality modeled on the IPCC for climate change. This will ensure that inequality continues to be discussed by leaders as an ongoing topic in the G20 and beyond, and including in other multilateral platforms. serve as a legacy for South Africa's G20 presidency. Some achievements which can be recorded as legacies of South Africa's G20 presidency include the AI Initiative for Africa, launched in collaboration with the African Union and UNESCO during AI for Africa conference, establishment of the Technology Policy Assistance Facility, launch of the G20 Clean Cooking Legacy Program, establishment of the Africa Energy Efficiency Facility, adoption of the voluntary and non-binding high-level principles of combating illicit financial flows to address the debilitating impact of IFFs on our continent, the Ubuntu approaches on food security and nutrition, excessive food price volatility, the South African Presidency Initiative on G20 Africa Cooperation Agenda on Trade and Investment. Update on the preparations for the G20 Leaders Summit. Preparations for the summit are on track with numerous heads of states and governments from the G20 member countries, including invited guest countries, have been confirmed for participation. Heads of international organizations, in total, 42 countries are confirmed for participation at various levels. This includes 20 G20 members, excluding the United States, for reasons well known to you. 16 guest countries and 6 countries representing regional economic communities in Africa, the Caribbean, and East Africa. The Leaders Summit will take place from the 22nd to the 23rd November 2025. The agenda of the summit will be anchored on the following 3 sessions, namely, Session 1, Inclusive and Sustainable Economic Growth, Leaving No One Behind, Building Our Economies, the Role of Trade, Financing for Development, and the Debt Burden. Session 2, A Resilient World, the G20's Contributions, Disaster Risk Reduction, Climate Change, Just Energy Transition, Food Systems. And Session 3, A Fair and a Just Future for All Critical Minerals, Decent Work, and Artificial Intelligence. It is also expected that before taking actions on the South African Leaders Declaration, Summit will take note or adopt the following reports commissioned by our G20 presidents: the Africa Expert Panel, the Extraordinary Committee of Independent Experts on the Global Wealth Inequality, the G20 Review. High-level sides events, including the IPSA Leaders Meeting, the Global Fund Aid Replenishment Meeting, the High-Level Renewable Energy Pledging Event, a Compact with Africa event, a Disaster Risk Reduction Meeting, a meeting with Africa Heads of State, and special South Africa-EU Summit are set to take place on the margins of the Leaders Summit. So that is the calendar for you. I hope you will be able to divide yourself to attend most of them, or some of them, when you are called upon for the press briefings. We thank the residencies of the host metropolitan city of Johannesburg and the province of Gauteng province for their patience, for the disruptions that have endured to date. More efforts are also being made to minimize disruptions as far as possible, especially on our roads in and around the venues and relevant ports of entry. And I want to thank also the Premier here of Gauteng, the Mayor of the City of Johannesburg, for the work that they have done. Their work is visible. We have seen how hosting a major event of this magnitude can be a catalyst for higher levels of service delivery, and look forward to sustaining and expanding the improvements we have seen. I know that there's always criticism when events of this nature come. And I've seen some of it on social media that we were doing all this because of G20. I always like to remind South Africans that this skepticism is something that we also heard a lot prior to the 2024 national general elections on load shedding. When we were saying at that time there has been a sustained period of no load shedding, they said, yeah, no, it's because we're going to elections. After elections, there will be load shedding immediately. We are now 1 year and 3 months after the elections. There is no load shedding. So it does show that sometimes you do need events to turn the situation around. And I believe the province of Gauteng has used this event to turn the situation around, and they've used it as a catalyst. They can only sustain it moving beyond this point. Update on the preparations for the G20 Social Summit. Preparations for the G20 Social Summit are going well, with 5,000 people expected to attend the summit at the Beachwood Hotel in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg. Of that, 4,050 will be from civil society and various engagements groups. Communications and branding are underway, and GCIS has provided the support for that meeting. There will be several exhibitions at the venue, including the Department of Small Businesses and so forth. The presidency has commenced with negotiations of the South Africa's declarations. Sherpas Virtual began online negotiations on the declarations on the 10th of November 2025 and started the in-person negotiations yesterday. On 16 November 2025, at the fourth Sherpa meeting, which is scheduled to conclude on the 19th November 2025. We have a strong belief that with those who are present, consensus can be built for the Leaders Summit to be able to adopt a declaration. I hope you are noting that. Our emphasis is that with those that are present, we should be able to build consensus for the adoption of a Leaders Declaration. Negotiations are still ongoing, and at the right time and at the right level, announcements will be made in that regard. The draft South Africa's declaration focuses on the global development agenda and on the number of issues I have already mentioned. South Africa views the diversity of the G20 nations as a strength rather than a source of division, and has preserved the unity of the group in pursuit of its priorities. We have done everything possible to encourage robust engagements to allow the negotiations to happen in an open and fair platform. Even with the US, when they raised concerns, we did our best to accommodate them, and they did come back into some of the meetings. At some point, it was indicated that they will be fully participants, and including at the Leaders Summit, that they will be represented at the Vice President level. But they have now decided out of their own volition and not being pushed out of the G20 by South Africa. Our doors remain open for them if they want to participate at the leaders level of the summit at the right level. The doors are still open because they are not expelled. They decided on their own. So from this context, we are ready to proceed with the meeting and with those that are present to negotiate and come out with outcomes of the declaration. It is our firm belief that the outcome of the South African summit will be ambitious and leave a lasting legacy for the cause of the African continent, the Global South, and for the people of the world. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Lamola. I will now note colleagues for a round of questions. Ms. Diane Hawker, Juanita Hunter. Okay, let's just do it maybe first row, and then we'll take the next row. With the microphone starting right at the end there, rather, and going all the way down to where it needs to go. It will end with Tando. Please introduce yourself and the media house that you are from.
1, 2, testing. My name is Tereraim Pasiri from INI Africa Media. So my question, in line with South Africa's commitment to making the G20 more accessible and relevant to ordinary citizens, are there any initiatives that leverage arts and creative industries such as music to democratize knowledge about the G20's role and foster inclusive community-centered engagement across the continent? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Connie Tancha from News from Africa. There's been a lot of conversation around who is being represented at the Leaders Summit. It's a Leaders Summit for a reason. I think the enthusiasm around who's actually going to be here is because it's the first time on the African continent, and if world leaders G20 world leaders are not present themselves, it is seen as a slight against Africa and South Africa hosting this summit. So for clarity, can you just maybe list the countries that are not physically whose leaders are not going to be present in the actual Leaders Summit, despite the fact whether they'll have delegations or not? So which leaders are not going to physically be here? And then the second question is that around, it matters or not matters. You've touched on the U.S. Absence. Can you, Minister, can you please just sort of outline to us what will the handover look like in the absence of the U.S. delegation? Is there a report that gets physically put on an empty seat? What does that look like? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Diane Hawker from Deutsche Welle. The issue of the Palestinian planes which arrived in South Africa has been something that's been quite topical. And I'd like to know whether Minister Lamola has any view on the timing of the arrival of these planes just ahead of the G20 summit. Is it something that was designed to embarrass South Africa in any kind of way, considering that it seems like proper paperwork was not done, there was some kind of shady business behind the scenes? And from an international relations perspective, is South Africa engaging with the Israeli government, which is responsible for the Palestinian territories, about this issue, which has become an issue of global concern?
Thank you very much. Vitaly Markovic from Tass News Agency. If South African government assess the move from from Washington as the boycott or something else? I mean that not appearance of U.S. delegation on G20 summit. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Thando Mayako. My question was for the Minister of Finance, but I don't see him anymore. Or, okay, it's specifically for him because it's an issue for the finance track. But okay, the B20 is calling for lower risk ratings for long-term infrastructure under Basel III, arguing that it would unlock billions for development. First question is...
Thando, let's wait for the Minister. Yeah.
She did say, though.
Yeah.
She really did say.
You did warn us. Thank you.
Good morning. Nokanya Mtambo from Eyewitness News. Just to add to Konita's question, please, on the handover process. Obviously, the report here and the handover to the next presidency is ceremonial at the Leaders Summit itself, but can you perhaps, Minister Lamola, take us through the process, the diplomatic process, if there is any, for the handover post that? Would it be something that's then discussed at the Troika level? Because I would imagine you'd want the US to get that report, the declaration, if you do reach one. And then just on that as well, judging by US President Donald Trump's stance on Africa and his history with Africa, the likelihood of him perhaps not taking forward the Africa agenda under his presidency are high. What's the workaround there? Because South Africa would have worked quite hard throughout the year trying to make sure that the Africa agenda is on the table. And I don't imagine you want that to be dropped post this, so what's the workaround there? Can we also just get a sense on how much you expect to make from the summit overall? If you are able to maybe also just let us know how much was spent in the preparation overall and what you expect your return on that investment to have been.
So you mean like a profit, how much you expect to make?
I mean, what from a tourism perspective, okay. What are you hoping, how much are you hoping, your investment perspective, how much are you hoping you would have clawed out of this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's the first round of questions. We will consider taking next round. We will have to take a next round. Minister, and the Premier are still caucusing who's dealing with which question. No, maybe just to restate the questions, Minister, so we're clear that you have all of them. It's an initiative to make the G20 accessible from a cultural point of view and an arts point of view. Then there are two questions around the handover, how it's going to take place. And there's also questions about exactly who is coming. We have a question about the Palestinian issue with the plane and whether we are engaging the Israeli government. Then there was a question about whether we regard the USA not coming as something beyond a boycott. And then we have a question about how do we intend to ensure that the African agenda is taken forward, and also what do we think the impact from an investment point of view will be of the G20 from a tourism perspective. Those are the questions, Premier.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Minister and Minister Godongwana. From our side as a province, maybe let me respond to what the Eyewitness News have raised. What we've done for the preparations, especially infrastructure, water, electricity, and the beautification of the entire province, we requested departments to use their current budgets. So there was no new money that was allocated specifically for the G20. What we've done in the last 4 months, we've been meeting every Tuesday. Myself as the Premier with the MECs, the executive mayors and national leadership, that's the ministers that are responsible for this task. And we went item by item that has been budgeted for and allocated to municipalities and provincial government. And we've worked extremely hard to ensure that we fix the street lights, the traffic lights, fill the potholes, and attend to issues that need to be attended. And we've long agreed, together with the Minister, that even after the G20, those meetings will continue to be held so that we can continue to attend to some of the areas. We're indeed pleased that we are almost there. I will always say to people, events of this magnitude we've learned from previous experiences when we held the BRICS summit, that we are not there until the event has taken place. So for the first time, I always appreciate rain. For the first time, I don't want rain because it reopens the potholes, it creates problems that need to be attended. So we're crossing our fingers that by Wednesday, the weather will behave, and on the basis of that, we'll be in a position to do the final touch-ups. But we're quite happy and excited with the work done thus far, but until the session starts, we don't think that we should sit on our laurels. In terms of the tourism figures, we're quite excited with that. Almost all our hotels are fully booked. The airlines are fully booked to come here. Our retail stores, especially our malls, are buzz with visitors. And our major tourist attractions from Mahalis up coming down here. So immediately after that, it's only when they've spent money that will tell you how much they've spent. But we're indeed looking beyond the billions of rands. We really believe this activity and this event will assist us to attract major tourists, and they will be in a position to take advantage of the money that they're bringing in our province. And I want once more to add or to echo my sentiments to what Minister Lamola have done. Nasrec has never looked so beautiful before. And I want to thank the team, especially the team that has been working here in Nasrec. This looks beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. On the question of leveraging the arts and the music initiatives, yes, in all the working group meetings, there were lots of arts activities, exhibitions, local talent, and I believe it will also continue this week. In terms of working group discussions, obviously the issues related to the arts will be impacted by the digital and so forth, the working group, that it will also come from there. But as you have heard, the list of priorities that we have focused on. The G20 leaders' presence. At this stage, we have got confirmations that only 4 countries will not be represented at the head of state level. They will either be represented at the foreign minister level or Sherpa level, which is the level of representation at the G20 or ministerial level, at the level of the Leaders Summit. So it is Russia, Mexico, and Argentina. They will be present. It's just that they will be represented at the level either of the foreign minister or of the Sherpa. In fact, Mexico and Argentina will be represented at the level, at the ministerial level, foreign minister's level. China will be represented by Premier Li at that level. Whether do we read anything to this as a snub of some sort or undermining Africa? No. We don't see this as a snub or undermining of Africa. In all multilateral platforms events, it does happen for whatever reasons that heads of states are not able to attend, and they will delegate whoever they decide to delegate, either their foreign minister or whoever the head of state decides to delegate for whatever reasons and whatever architecture of that country. It's nothing abnormal. Even ourselves, sometimes, I represent President Ramaphosa in many platforms. And the recent one, high-level event I represented the president was at the Financing for Development in Sevilla in Spain. You'll remember when the president had challenges with the at that time in the GNU and so forth. I represented him in Spain, and I've represented him in many platforms. There have also been many ministers who have represented the president where I could not be able to represent the president in many other platforms. So it does happen in these multilateral platforms. It has hardly happened even in the G20 that you have 100% attendance at the head of state level. It differs from country to country, it differs reasons to reasons. So we are also viewing it from that context, that it's part of a multilateral platform. And out of 20 heads of states, and you only have 4 that are not there, it does show that they take the G20 very serious. It's just that there could have been whatever reason that has led to them not coming. Some of the countries have it's known how, for example, China, Premier Li has been representing President Xi in many multilateral platforms this year and last year. It has been him traveling. I think President Xi only went to is it South Korea or Japan, where he also had to engage with President Trump. But I believe that if that was not the reason, he will also maybe not have attended. Because in the Asiana one, it was Premier Li who was there, and you will remember that we were also there, represented at the head of state level by President Ramaphosa. And at the UN General Assembly, in Brazil, BRICS, and so forth. So it's nothing unusual. It happens with this type of gatherings. How do we view the U.S. non-attendance? They have said it themselves, that they are not coming. That's what they've said. They are not attending. You can call it whatever. Someone can call it a boycott. Someone will call it non-attendance. But the reality is that they are not attending, they are not here. We view it as non-attendance. They are absent. So in their absence, the countries that are present must take a decision. And that is what is currently unfolding. The Sherpas are negotiating the leaders' declaration. We are moving towards making a decision in terms of what, in terms of the leaders' declaration. Negotiations are happening. And in the later stage, in the course of the week later, you will hear what is the outcome. But we are forging ahead to persuade the countries that are present that we must adopt a leaders' declaration, because the institution cannot be bogged down by someone who's absent. Because if I'm absent for whatever reasons, if I don't agree with the agenda and so forth, if I have got any problem, I must come to the platform and raise my issues with the agenda. And there are those that are raising it, debates are robust, and that is the nature of negotiations. Because if I am absent and the institution cannot function, it means the next G20, someone will have a reason not to go to the US and cite whatever. Does it mean that, therefore, there can't be a declaration in the US? It moves to UK, someone has another, and it's 20 countries. You can always have a reason in any country. I mean, out of 20, one will have an issue or a reason of some sort. So this can completely paralyze the G20's work and its function. So that's why it is important that a declaration must be adopted by the countries that are present. And with regards to the Palestinian issue, I believe Madiba will also come onto this, not the Palestinian one, the issue of the declaration and so forth, because he has attended some G20 meetings. I think he will be able to shed some further light. The Palestinian plain, as to whether there is some shady work and so forth, indeed we are suspicious as the South African government about the circumstances surrounding the arrival of the plane and the passengers that were in the plane. And this matter is a subject of investigation that must be thoroughly investigated, and the South African public will know at some stage. But it is indeed an issue of concern to us. It does look like it represents a broader agenda to remove Palestinians from Palestine into many different parts of the world, and it's a clearly orchestrated operation because they are not only being sent to South Africa, there are other countries where such flights have been sent. So indeed, it's a matter that is being investigated, and we do not want any further flights to come our way, because this is a clear agenda to cleanse out the Palestinians out of Gaza and the West Bank and those areas which South Africa is against. And the issue related to the handover, how it is going to happen. We are here, and we have said we are ready to hand over to the US. But for them to, if they should be, because the handover is really ceremonial. It's a ceremonial, as we say, it's a ceremonial handover. We remain prepared to hand over here in South Africa, in Johannesburg. So they need to, if they want a ceremonial handover, they must come to the Leaders Summit, and we will hand over to them. If they don't come, we will make a pronouncement about the outcomes of the summit, the Leaders' Declaration. So as to how they will start their process, I mean, it will be up to them. Maybe they will call a meeting and say, well, now starting. It's really up to them. Our job will end when there's a declaration and there's an end date. From that date, South Africa is done with its role. We will have handed over to them here in Johannesburg if they come. But if they don't come, we will just issue the declaration. And the US will decide how they want to continue in the next year. But from our side, we'll have done what we're supposed to do, which is to deliver an outcome of the summit. What is our view with regards to whether they will proceed with the Africa? The reality is that with all the issues that we have put on the table, they will now be part of the conversations of the G20 and of all other multilateral forums, because some of them have already been taken over by other platforms like the UN, the Critical Minerals Report of the Secretary General, the Pact of the Future, the Financing for Development in Seville has taken over some of these matters. There will still be conversations about them in terms of their continuity. Even in the G20, South Africa will still be a member of the G20. The African Union on its own is a member, and also all the other countries understand the need to assist the African continent to develop, for beneficiation at source, to deal with issues of disaster resilience, and so forth. So that cannot be wished away. It will always be there. I think that was the last one related to me. So maybe Crispin, you'll request Tando to repeat the question. It was very technical, Madiba. That's why we waited for you.
I'm also not technical.
Can we get Tando a mic? We'll do follow-ups after. We need to give others a chance, so we'll have to come back. The answer was it's a matter that's still under investigation. Thank you. Mr. Mayeko.
All right, thank you so much. My name is Tando Mayeko from the Business Day. My question is about infrastructure financing to the Minister of Finance. Now, the B20 is calling for lower risk weightings for long-term infrastructure under Basel III, arguing that it would unlock billions in investment. What specific proposals is South Africa taking to the G20 regarding Basel III capital requirements for long-term infrastructure financing? My second question is, how confident are you that South Africa can secure broad G20 support for lowering risk weights on infrastructure loans?
Let's just get this question out of the way, then we'll take the second round.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just on this point about the G20 and the absence and presence of people and so on, and hand over all those details. You know, it's not the first time that you have got geopolitical problems in the G20. The first acute problem, which was bigger than the one we're facing now, was in Indonesia. It was the first year of Ukraine war. And the tensions were more acute at the time, particularly between the G7 and the developing world. So it was not only one country, it was the G7 and the developing world. I would imagine first opening sentence of all the countries of the G20, or G7, I'm sorry, we must condemn Russia for attacking Ukraine, and we couldn't find each other on a declaration. We've managed, the G20 did not collapse. We carried through that geopolitical problem into India. The G20 did not collapse. In April next year in Washington, Scott Bissett will be sitting on my right if they are going to chair the meeting. I'm a troika, you can't wish me away. So the sitting is a troika. He's going to sit on my right. I'm a troika. So things are not collapsing. What is likely to happen is that the Americans may shape their agenda. Every whole leader, presidency, shape the agenda to reflect its own priorities. they will be entitled to do that. So, coming to Tando's question, first and foremost, the G20 is a voluntary organization. We do make decisions on the, I'm going to come back to the cost of infrastructure. First and foremost, we have introduced a particular focus on the African continent in the finance track. And that focus reinforces what is already in existence called the G20 Common Framework, which looks at how to deal with the debt in emerging and developing economies. The third point is that we have got a declaration on the how do we deal with the debt issue. The fourth point, we've had a discussion and formulated a resolution moving forward how to finance infrastructure, part of which must take into account what you are raising. In addition to that, with using our G20 presidents, we've got what is called the Africa Expert Panel. Among other things, it focuses on, among other things, is this issue of the cost of capital and cost of infrastructure. They are making recommendations in that regard. They're going to be released when they make the presentation. So it's a matter that is given in attention to. What is interesting in terms of their proposals is that you'll see, even with rating agencies, as you refer to rating agencies, what is becoming clear is that there's a particular bias against emerging economies. Precisely, they are then saying in their report, what we need to do is have a data-driven and transparent way of dealing with this matter, so that you should be able to compare apples with apples. If countries have got the same fiscal metrics, they must be treated the same with the rating agencies. The problem at the moment, that data is not visible to ensure that the accountability and transparency of the rating agencies. So there's a multifaceted approach to deal with that question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now start the second row of questions. We'll come back to follow-ups if you've already asked your question. Let's start here with Goge, and then the microphone will come across.
Ngiyabonga Goge from ENCA. Will the South African government be sending a delegation to the United States next year for G20 Summit, number one? Number two, tied to that, if I'm not mistaken, the first in-person Sherpa meeting in the US takes place on the 12th of December, if I'm not mistaken. Is the South African delegation physically going there? Thank you.
15th December.
Good morning. My name is Saeed Abdullah. It's from Phoenix TV. My question for Minister Lamola. Remember earlier this, I think it was in February.
Can you just repeat your name and the media house, sorry?
Saeed, Phoenix TV.
Thank you.
Earlier in Feb, during the Foreign Ministers Summit here in this hall, while the journalists were asking about the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, you told them there's a crisis happening in Sudan and no one asking about it. So 9 months later, I just want to say, like as we saw in the last month, and the humanitarian crisis happening in Darfur, etc. So South Africa as a G20 host and as an African leading voice will take a proactive role to address this issue, or it's just going to be within the boundaries of traditional diplomacy? Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Kylie Shekumalo here from SABC News. Minister Lamola, for South Africa, for this G20, there's been quite a lot of emphasis to make it like an African G20. What are you hoping will be the legacy? Because, I mean, it's a massive event with quite a number of issues that are quite pertinent for Global South, for the African continent. But also, just another question, Minister. As part of the Troika, where you have South Africa, US, and Brazil, how are you going to ensure that it becomes a very seamless exercise so that their non-attendance is not really overshadowing what you are presenting to the world? Thank you so much.
Just pass on the mic this way.
Hello. Hi, it's Musibudi Ratlebani from Yomiuri Shimbun, Japanese News. Minister Lamola, you mentioned that there was a total of 42 countries that participated. To what extent did the delegates attend these meetings in person? And what percentage of those that participated virtually? What were the main reasons for the virtual attendance, and which countries are those? And lastly, how significant do you think an in-person attendance is for the effectiveness of engagement within the G20?
Hello, thanks. Nellie Payton from Reuters. Minister, I just have a follow-up question about the flight of Palestinians. The Israeli authorities said that the people on the planes had valid and approved visas and that they had authorization to land in South Africa. Can you say anything about whether that's true? Was their arrival authorized, and did South Africa know about it? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. That concludes that round. We'll invite the minister. We'll come back to the next
Thank you, Govt. Whether we will participate in the US G20 engagements or not, yes, we will participate because we believe in true democratic processes. And whatever differences of views with the US, we believe they must be engaged on the table. And we will go to engage in those issues. And that's what we think the US should have done, even in South Africa. They should have come and raised whatever issue that they have with our G20 theme, our agenda, and our priorities, and engage them. And as I've said, the shepherds, as we are speaking, are in robust engagements of negotiations and so forth. That is the nature of this platform. You don't run away from an engagement because of whatever concerns that you have. You confront the issues, raise them, and deal with them. At a bilateral level, also, when we first heard about the situation President Trump that he raised, we went to Washington to engage him, to raise the issues. And that's the nature of this life. There must be no time where channels of communications are closed. They must always be open. That is diplomacy. You must engage and use the platforms that are created to do that. So we will attend in the US meetings. Sudan, whether we will, our president has raised the Sudan matter in a number of platforms, and he continues to do so. And the last time he raised the matter is in his engagement with the Vatican, the Holy Father. He raised the matter, and also the Vatican also raised the Sudan matter. So he raises it in a number of platforms. He has also hosted a lot of Sudanese delegations from all the various warring factions in Sudan, and conveyed his message of them opening lines of communications with each other and the need to find peaceful platforms of dialogue and negotiations. That is the only way the Sudanese matter will be resolved. And he will continue to raise it. I have also been raising it in all the relevant platforms and also participating in all efforts that we are able to open up to assist the Sudanese situation. So it's not only at the multilateral level, also at a bilateral level, there has been efforts. He has hosted a number of delegations in this regard. And not just Sudan, even South Sudan, it has been an issue of concern for us. As you are aware, we are the chairperson of the C5. Recently, if I'm not mistaken, it was in October, the Deputy President was in South Sudan to engage with all the relevant stakeholders to ensure and work on to ensure that the revitalized peace agreement does hold and that we continue to support and assist South Sudan towards their elections in December 2026. What are we going to do so that our event is not overshadowed by the absence of the U.S. Kaya? As you have seen, we have continued to do our job. We have hosted now 130 meetings, which have achieved a number of outcomes. So we have focused on the job. We have done the job. It's only when we're asked by you about the U.S. that we will then respond and say this is the situation. But we're focused on the job. And as I've said, the Sherpas meeting is ongoing. There's discussions on the content of the leaders' declaration and all the issues that this summit must achieve. So we remain focused. We sometimes get sidetracked by you to ask us about the U.S. and all that, which we have got a duty to respond to, so that we can inform the public through you. Because we also understand that you are asking this with the purpose of informing the public. The 42 countries, whether it's in person and virtually, my sister, I think you might not have understood it as per the 42 countries is what will be represented in the Leaders Summit. So the question sounded as if in the previous meetings, how many attended and so forth. So in the 130 meetings, we had a very few which were virtually. Maybe you can indicate how many, but very few were virtual. Most of the meetings were physical, and we have discouraged any virtual attendance. It is the same with the Leaders Summit. All of them will be in attendance physically. So that is the situation. They will be here. These 42 countries I referred to, they will be here, and also the additional multilateral institutions. They will be here in full attendance here. The issue of the valid and approved permits that the Israeli, you said it's the Israel embassy or something, have said those people arrived with them. At this stage, the information we have is that they didn't have those required approvals and permits. But as I have said, this is a matter that is subject to investigation. It is being investigated. Our authorities will get into the bottom of the matter, and we will have a comprehensive outcome out of that investigation. So at this stage, the information at our disposal is that they didn't have. But maybe investigation can reveal something differently. But I doubt that there can be something different. But we will wait for that investigation because I know that sometimes the embassy does embark on some of undiplomatic commentary in the public of Israel. So at this stage, that is what we have. The information is that they didn't have all those required documents. So we'll await the comprehensive outcome of the investigation. Thank you. I think those were the ones related to me. Madiba will deal with these. Maybe, Madiba, let me just come back to the legacy one. But it is in the statement, Kai. I did mention the legacy. Do you want me to go back to it?
He concedes, Minister. He's conceding from here.
It's fine, we're covered. Okay, thank you.
Just to emphasize to Spamel, the meetings from the 12th from December, they are chaired by the United States of America. We handed over the chairperson to them. If this system is a rotational, they didn't need to be here. We handed them for, but rotational is them. The question is, will we participate in this meeting? But mind you, those meetings are Shepherd meetings, which prepare work for the ministerial meetings. Right. The first finance ministerial and central bankers meeting is in April on the margins of the spring meeting with World Bank and IMF. Will we be sending a delegation? I'll be there. Unless they don't give me a visa, that's a different matter. So that's a different matter. Now, the second issue, I want to qualify, I'm going to respond to two issues, but I want to qualify. These issues happened before the tweet. Erasmus, the tweet. Yeah, before the tweet, there were nice things. Okay. First, if you ask on the leaders on this finance track. Eh? So we had a couple of things, and some of them, the Americans said, were quite interested in them. We'll continue with them when you take over the presidency. One of which is the infrastructure program. It's a legacy that's going to go beyond the South African presidency. The debt issues, even the Americans said they are prepared to carry those things beyond our South African presidents. To that extent, I'm answering the question of the legacy. So that's the finance track side of it. As an important legacy as well is agreed by the developing world of a principle of engagement with Africa, which is going to go beyond our presidency. So to some extent, there's kind of, that's why I'm saying this thing happened before the tweet, because I don't know what the position of the Americans since then. For instance, we were able to hand over in the finance ministers and central banks meeting to formally hand over to the Americans, because they've been participating in all our meetings until the last one. So we're able to hand over. I'm responding to a question about the participation. We've not experienced this lack of participation, even if it's not at a ministerial level, but the Americans have been active in shafting and participating in the finance and central government. Again, I must qualify, it was before, whatever you call it. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I'm giving you, colleagues, the last round of follow-up questions because we have the minister here. The week is going to be a very busy one, so I really want colleagues to be sure that they've asked everything they needed to ask. So this is the final round.
Can I? Okay.
Okay, no one else other than her? Oh, wait, okay.
Can I start? I'm Minako Sasako from Yomiuri Shimbun, Japanese daily newspaper. My question is to Minister Lamola. And you said that you will attend the U.S. meeting in December, but U.S. President Trump said that they will not invite South Africa. Is it allowed? I mean that the presidency is obliged to invite all member states. What do you think? And the second question is, U.S. will focus on finance track, and they may suspend some Sherpa tracks meetings such as health, climate change, and gender, and so on. What is your counter argument? How important the Sherpa tracks?
Okay, but I just want to clarify some. I'm hearing that for the first time, some of the things that you have said. So I don't know how factual it is, but you, the news people. Ms. Hunter?
Thank you very much. Just a quick follow-up. When the Minister talked about the negotiation on the Sherpa level for the declaration, the leaders' declaration, who are the countries that are resisting? Because if the US is not in the room, they've said they want to oppose having a declaration of the Leaders Summit. Who is opposing that? And does that amount to an unsuccessful summit? I know the Finance Minister alluded to it, but just can you definitively say what happens if there's no declaration come Sunday?
Okay. Can I also just ask Mr. Jube to come to the front? He'll deal with some of the Sherpa track questions so that he's the expert in the room. Yes, Ms. Hunter.
I think this is a question for the Premier, but any of the gentlemen on the stage can respond. I'm looking at the stage and there's only gentlemen, maybe something to look at from an equality perspective.
You want to come stand here?
No, okay. Thanks. Is that an official offer? One of the issues in the G20 is the issue of inequality. And in this province, in this city, inequality is a major issue. We've seen the beautification on the highways, but just this weekend I was in Diepsloot. There's no beautification there. How is, beyond the G20, how is the South African government going to make sure that inequality is not just something that's spoken about, but something that citizens get to see and live and experience an improvement in their circumstances?
Last question. Next to Clayson. Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's
yes.
me. Yeah.
Forgot you again.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tando Shope from Reuters. I know Minister Lamola has answered this question ad nauseum, but perhaps there are new, I don't know, maybe you have a new take on it. But if you could please give us a response about your reaction to President Trump choosing to boycott the G20 in South Africa on his claims of how he says Afrikaners are being treated badly / a white genocide. Thank you.
No, you are right. That has been answered ad nauseum. Ms. Ntambo.
Nokanya again from Eyewitness News. Minister Lamola, I know you're a little cautious in terms of giving too much detail about the texture and the color of the declaration, but can we ask, please, both you and Minister Godongwana to just give us a sense of what some of the sticking points may still be at this point? The negotiations are obviously at an advanced stage, but can we just get a sense of what the tricky aspects of it are, if you can, just a glimpse of?
I think he said it started yesterday. The Sherpa meeting started yesterday. I think
but
that's
you
where
would
Ben can.
know
No.
what
Ben,
the difficult
that's where Ben
parts
can kick
are.
off. It's unlikely. Mr. Jube?
Thank you, ministers, and thank you to the media in attendance. Through you, ministers, very briefly, of course, there's quite a bit of disrespect for multilateralism out there. So what we have at the moment in the Leaders' Declaration is that we, as South Africa, our foreign policy, our stance on many of these issues, or on all issues, are informed by norms. When it comes to gender issues, women, it's informed by the Beijing platform, for example. But so the sticky issues we have at the moment are where we differ from, or where certain countries differ from others when it comes to the issues that deal with those norms in those multilateral instruments. So gender is an issue, some climate change issues in the Paris Agreement, and sustainable development goals, of course, would also be a major issue. So there are certain issues where we have to work harder to settle those elements. I think also we need to acknowledge the fact that the Leaders' Declaration that we are working on is something we are working on with everyone in the room. The majority of the countries in the room that are negotiating, as Minister has referred to the Sherpa meeting at the moment, are supporting South Africa's goals to achieve a Leaders' Summit, a Leaders' Declaration for this summit. That means that those in the room, if we do get their agreement on the text that we are negotiating, then there will be a Leaders' Declaration, and we do believe that will happen. The elements in that Leaders' Declaration are the issues that are dear to South Africa's G20 presidency. The 4 priorities cited by our leaders, by our leadership, our high-level deliverables, Task Force 1, 2, and 3, and many of those issues that we, throughout the presidency, have given attention to. I'm not sure, but what I can say about the US attendance and us going to their events in their presidency, South Africa is a member of the G20 group. As a member, you are attending G20 events. It is a matter of going and showing commitment, as Minister Lamola has pointed out, showing commitment to be in the room and participating in those groups that you have committed to being a member of. So if you're a member of a group, you are in these meetings. It's not about attending or being invited or not. It's about attending and living up to the membership commitments that you have made. I'm not sure if I've covered everything, but I'm ready to take anything else. Sorry, there was a question about the US. The US presidency of the G20. They have indicated that about 10 of the working groups in the Sherpa track will remain, and not the 15 we see at the moment. And in the finance track, they're looking at about 3 working groups remaining. Those are the indications, but we do not have the specifics in terms of those specific working groups, what will be the 10 that will remain, but they are very much focused on growth and economy and finance matters. Thank you very much.
Dan, let me give you a try. I always argue that if we have to start doing something beautiful, if you start in Soweto, Tembisa will say, why not us? If you start in Alexander, Kagiso will say, why not us? So we are committed to ensure that we make our province beautiful. And we are taking advantage of this event so that we can expand it to cover all our communities. And the good thing is that we meet every Tuesday with all mayors, whether it's a mayor of Morafong or a mayor of Mfuleni, so that we can start to beautify the entire province. And we're excited that part of the theme of this G20 is equality, so that we can level the playing field across, not only in our cities or province, but across the country and across the continent. So we're quite excited with the approach. It has taken time. We believe that we have found a formula that will assist us to deal with the challenges that we had. Previously, each city and each municipality was planning alone in their own cocoons. What we've done, we started with law enforcement to ensure that we remove what I can call imaginary boundaries, purely because if a criminal is caught in Germiston and runs into Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni must not retreat. They must continue to chase the criminal, even if he enters Johannesburg. So that's what we've done. We are now doing it to say which big projects can we plan at the higher level. For example, Gautrain. We are expanding Gautrain to reach other cities. We are planning together. And many other big projects that we really believe that the way G20 has afforded us an opportunity to blend from the center, we exploit that opportunity to expand and beautify all other areas in our community. So we intend to do so. But there's something that was very unfortunate that have developed during this period, that there are some people who hate South Africa, who are South Africans, that don't want to see beauty in our country. They've openly declared that they will vandalize everything that we have built. They vandalize traffic lights, they're vandalizing signage of G20, they're vandalizing some of our street lights, they're also vandalizing some of the strategic resources that we have, especially those that are responsible for distribution of water and electricity. So we had to up some security services to ensure that we protect these installations, because there are people who want to push a narrative that this thing has collapsed and therefore it must collapse. So if you try to improve it, they think that the narrative will be defeated, and therefore they must hire people to steal cables, vandalize the cables, and do all wrong things. So we've learned something, that we must not assume that all South Africans are happy that we are hosting the G20, that not all South Africans are excited that we are indeed improving our cities. I think Minister Lamola correctly captured it, that there are others that are accusing us that we are just putting a lipstick on a pig, that this thing is going to collapse. We are not going into long sustainable resolution to find everlasting solutions to it. And they are not aware the resources that we've amassed and the support that we're getting from national government, and also the grants that we are receiving, so that this intervention is not cosmetic, is real, is permanent, and can assist us to really reposition our province. We are also hosting a very big tournament called Live Golf. That's the World Cup of Golf in Steyn City in March. So from here, we are moving to prepare for Steyn City. And Diepsloot will be a beneficiary because that close to Steyn City, so that we can continue to beautify. We are bidding for big events. You've seen that F1 formula, the likelihood that will come for the first time to our country is there as well, and to our province. So we are not intervening now for G20. We are intervening for major international events and tournaments that are coming to our province, so that we can be in a position to ensure that our province is ready to host and have the necessary expertise and talents and skill to host these big events. Thank you.
Minister Lamola says, I've become too militant these days. If I become militant, it's going to come up and suppress us. Let me just tell you the following. The people was, is there going to be a piece of document coming out of this meeting? Quinita? There will be. The form of that is still going to emerge depending on the outcome of the negotiations of the Shepherd. Let me tell you, there are normally two forms of document that emerge from those meetings. The first one, which is a bonus, is a declaration, which is agreed by everybody else. The fact that the USA is not here does not preclude the declaration. Let me tell you what. If the countries that are participating now agree on a declaration, they can say this is a declaration of the countries that participated, and in so doing, exclude the Americans. Let me just, for instance, in the finance track in Durban, the Americans didn't agree, everybody agreed. And somebody said, okay, why don't you put a footprint, and said all of us agreed, and the footprint, you said the American disagreed. But I'm saying there's going to be, the countries that are present can agree that let's have a declaration which says the countries that are here, which should not be banned and not include the USA, we are agreed on this declaration. That's a possibility. They may take a soft approach and say, okay, There are other colleagues who feel differently. Chairperson, give us your statement. What is called a chairperson statement. But it's got the same effect as a declaration because the only thing is that nobody contests you much on your content because the content comes from you as a host country in that sense. So there will be a declaration or a chairperson, there will be a document one way or the other out of the meeting. I want to agree with the gentleman that we are members of the G20. We are not invited member countries. The G20 consists of member countries and invited countries. Fortunate for us, we belong to the category of member states. So we don't need an invitation from anybody. If the United States, because they do not want to participate, the only way they can do it is to decline us visas. But they can't say you are not invited. So I just wanted to clarify that. The last point I want to make, every time we have an event in South Africa, people remind you, but there are people who are poor, there are people who are doing this. We know that. We know that, but I take it as a form of an attack on the event. Because on a day-to-day basis, we're grappling with this question. Part of what we should be focusing on, inequality is a function of poverty. And part of the major instrument of dealing with poverty is employment. But in the absence of employment, you put mitigating measures that deal with poverty. In that respect, South Africa is second to none. The closest in terms of the social protection we have is Chile. We invite you to make that comparison. In terms of the social protection measures South Africa has, the closest we're competing with to deal with poverty because we cannot achieve the employment which will deal with inequality long term. So we putting a lot of resources. In the budget we've tabled, we've said 61% of the non-interest spending is going to go directly to deal with the social wage. That excludes what is called the subsidies of basic wages or of basic services in municipalities. That on itself is a different packages, which is 106 billion rand. In order to deal with poverty in the absence of dealing with the major instrument of dealing with inequality, which is employment. We're turning the corner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madiba. I think I will just add a bit on this issue of inequality on the global perspective, that you will also remember that the President has appointed a team to deal with this issue of global inequality that is led by Professor Stiglitz. And that report is available. It has been published on the various scenarios and what countries need to do to respond to this challenge of inequality in emerging markets, the global south, the African continent, and so forth. So it does respond in detail, but it will also be part of ongoing work in this week, that aspect. I think the other issue I just wanted to maybe respond to, the inequality, but in the context of our domestic issues, deep slot and all that there is no beautification in some aspects and so forth. The President deliberately chose Nasrec. And as you heard when I gave you a background of Nasrec, because of its strategic location, given our history of spatial inequality and of apartheid, Soweto on the south, and the north, which was largely white, and the area of Nasrec, which was used during the period of apartheid for most events like the Rand Easter Show, which brought all South Africans under one roof. So he sees this as an important platform for the global South and the global North to find each other in this gathering and in this venue. And this venue is also close to a lot of communities around. Soweto, the one just next to Nasrec, for Reveille. So it was a deliberate decision by the president to have it here, so that the people of South Africa are also part of this whole activity. But there's also a lot of historic sites, the Soccer City, the Apartheid Museum, Gold Reef City, and all that have played a key role in our social fabric to build one nation. But also, throughout all the working groups meetings, maybe Madiba forgot to also mention that, have happened across the country. And I think Madiba's meetings, he attended another one in Kruger National Park. It's next to where I come from, but I didn't have the privilege to go to Kruger National Park. But at least I had the privilege to go to Sun City. One of our meetings, you'll remember, was in Sun City. And the first foreign ministers meeting was here in Nasrec. Others were in Gqeberha, in Durban, in Cape Town, and some few were spread across the country. It was a deliberate decision by the South African government to spread all this across the country. In some countries, they just had a whole city. They are hosted only in that city, and there is no spreading. And we are glad we did that, because the feedback we have received has been unbelievable. The people of the world are saying to us, you South Africans, you don't talk enough about your country. South Africa is very beautiful. They rave about our wines, the hotels, the hospitality, the places, the warmth of the South African people. Anywhere, when I meet colleagues of Madiba, whether in other multilateral platforms, they tell me how he hosted them nicely. When I meet colleagues of Minister Tau, they tell me the same thing. Colleagues of Minister Steenhuisen, they tell me how they enjoyed meat. They even know now that there's something called boerewors. And what is this other one? Biltong. They know that there's biltong. They said everyone who says is coming to South Africa, they're looking forward to eat this South African meat called biltong. So it has been a huge success. And I think ourselves as South Africans, sometimes we really do not appreciate what we have and talk much about this great country and achievements that we have taken through for the South African people, but not just for the South African people. When we are in Addis, the Africans, they rave about that, how South Africa as an African country has made them proud by putting the issues of Africa on the global agenda in the G20. They rave about how they are so proud about South Africa. Even when you go to Abuja, you go to Egypt, all of them, they say, you guys, you have made this about us. We feel we are now part of solutions to resolve global challenges. We had no obligation to take some of the meetings to Cairo in Egypt, to Abuja in Nigeria, but it was a political, deliberate decision to send a message that Africa is one and needs to speak in one voice. And when we said this is a G20 where we must put a spotlight on African issues, we meant it, and we worked on it and acted on it. And this is highly appreciated by the African Union in general. So it has been a huge success. And I believe that because you will be here, most of you, when you interview some of the delegates, they will also tell you how hospitable South Africa's G20 has been in 2025. And that's why I feel like we are back in 2010. This is a huge moment for our country, and let's make it work. Lastly, with regards to this issue of declaration and a summary statement that Madiba has eloquently explained, I only want to deal with the fact that it's not a uniquely South African phenomenon. It has happened in other countries that a declaration was not adopted, a chess summary was agreed upon. I think that was Indonesia. In Japan, although they called it a declaration, there were those that were objecting and so forth. So it's part of this multilateral platform. It's not a uniquely South African issue. And if we have been very clear in this press briefing that our intentions are clear, is that we must achieve a leaders' declaration in South Africa. There is nothing that precludes us from achieving it, and that is what we are proceeding in the negotiations, that there must be a leaders' declaration because the US is absent from the G20 as a member. Therefore, there is nothing that precludes the members that are present to agree on a declaration. But if we do not achieve it, it's still not a failure if we end up with a chess summary. It has happened in other countries. It does happen in any multilateral platform. And it will not be for the first time that the US withdraw on the eve of any such platform. I mean, the recent one was the one in Sevilla in Spain, the financing for development. And I think also at COP30. So it's not a uniquely South African thing. It's part of this multilateral platform, and ourselves as democrats as we are saying the countries that are present are able to take a decision to achieve a declaration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister and Ministers and Premier. You've been very hospitable with your time. I would now excuse you. I know that there are some colleagues who had asked for one-on-ones, so maybe we will attend to those. Thank you very much, colleagues. This concludes the press briefing.